Strange, but true stories. Tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. You're familiar with the teleporter on the Starship Enterprise, right? The beam of light scrambles your particles, beamed to the surface of an alien planet, and reassembled perfectly without any trouble or consequences. But that is just science fiction stuff from the wonderful imagination of Gene Roddenberry. Teleportation from one spot to another in an instant is pure fantasy. Or is it? Throughout history, there have been stories with documentation of incidents of people claiming to be at one location one moment and then in a completely different location miles away in the next. The following are just a few of those stories. The Soldier on Watch. In October 1593, Gil Perez was a soldier in the Philippines. He was on guard at the governor's palace in Manila. Word had arrived that the governor, Gomez Perez Dasmariñas, had been assassinated by Chinese pirates while sailing off the coast about 83 miles from Manila. The palace guards were awaiting the installation of the new governor of the Philippines. Because of the excitement and the concern about the loss of their leader, tension was high at the palace, and the guards had not slept much. Gil Perez leaned against a wall to rest, closing his eyes briefly to catch a few needed winks of sleep. When Perez opened his eyes a short while later, he was in an unfamiliar place. He looked around, confused about his new surroundings. Everything looked different, and he began to notice other strange things. There were guards approaching him, but in entirely different uniforms than the one he was wearing. These strange outfitted soldiers spoke Spanish, so he was able to understand them as they began to question him. They asked Gil Perez why he was wearing such a strange uniform here in the Plaza Mayor in Mexico City. Mexico City? While he was aware he was no longer at the governor's palace in Manila, he couldn't believe he was in Mexico City. He told the guards about the last few days, about the assassination of the Filipino governor Gomez Perez Dasmariñas, word of which had not arrived in Mexico City, as news typically only traveled as fast as a ship in the 16th century. Not believing his story and believing him to be a deserter, or worse, a servant of the devil, they brought him before the tribunal, who questioned him extensively. Perez maintained his innocence and kept repeating the same story despite harsh treatment and the threat of torture. Friar Gaspar de St. Augustine documented the testimony, translated roughly as, "I don't know how I did it, but I have traveled from Manila to here in less time than it takes the cock to crow." Not believing his incredible story of what we would now call teleportation, the tribunal put Perez in prison. For 2 months, he languished, yet never wavered from his story. 2 months later, a ship arrived from Manila, with news of the governor's death in the same manner as described by Perez. Officials asked these messengers if they knew of a palace guard named Gil Perez. Why, yes, they knew him, and swore that the last time they had seen him was October on guard at the governor's palace in Manila. He had not been heard from since. The Mexican government decided to release Perez from prison and let him sail back to Manila with his countrymen. This time, it took Perez the traditional 2 months to travel from Mexico City back to the Philippines by ship. You've lost him? A little more recent, yet also a bit more tragic, is the story of a 61-year-old man in South Africa mysteriously disappearing in a hospital. The man was admitted to Stellenbosch Hospital in Cape Town on October 5, 2017, for abdominal surgery. About 5:15 a.m. the morning after the surgery, an attending nurse left to fetch clean linens for the man's bed. When she returned, the man was gone. They searched inside and outside the hospital. A more extensive search by the South African Police Service was instigated the next day, yet no trace of the man was found. 2 days after the man disappeared, the hospital called the family at home, asking if the man somehow was there. The family was understandably confused and said, "No, He's at the hospital. How have you lost him?" Then, 13 days after he went missing, his lifeless body was found by construction workers in an isolated area in the ceiling. Construction was going on at the hospital, which inhibited the search according to a statement released by hospital officials, and they were baffled as to how the man wound up in a remote area of the ceiling, not easily accessible, especially by a man so soon out of surgery on his abdomen. Could he have teleported there somehow? Seems as likely an explanation as any that have been floated about. Mesmerized in Miami. November 2000, Ralph Morley and his wife were relaxing in the backyard of their Miami home when a stranger popped up in their hot tub. "I can't figure out where he could have come from. One moment the hot tub was empty, the next there's a strange man in it," said Morley. Startled and a little perturbed, they asked what the man was doing. Dazed, confused, and frightened, the man said he dove into a pool at the hotel he and his family were staying, and the next thing he knew, he had surfaced here in the hot tub. The man, identified as being from Kansas, was on vacation with his family, staying 8 miles away from where he wound up. Back at the hotel, the man's wife and 2 children became concerned when he didn't surface in the pool. They started a search, and the pool was cleared looking for him. He had vanished. She filed a missing persons report with the police, stating they had watched him dive into the deep end of the pool, but had never come back up. The police began their search and soon found him at a house 8 miles away from the hotel. After an investigation, it was noted that the time he went missing corresponded with the time he showed up in the Morley's hot tub, as if traveling through a portal between these 2 different places. The Hernandarias Incident. Monday, May 22, 2017, in the central province of Entre Rios in Argentina, a family gathered for a reunion at their home in Hernandarias. Many people of the extended family were there. At one point, a 13-year-old boy was sent to grab something from a storage area away from the house. Exactly what he was sent to get is not known. Finding the door to the storage area hard to open, he requested help from a family member. This man also found the door extremely hard to open, but kept working with it. After several minutes, the man was finally able to open the door and retrieve the item. When he turned around, the 13-year-old boy wasn't there. Figuring the boy had gotten bored and returned to the house, he went back without giving it much thought. When he got to the house, he asked where the boy was, but nobody had seen him return from the storage area. The family searched inside the house but found nothing. They started to worry and began walking down the street looking for him, but still no trace of the boy was found. After a few minutes, a cell phone rang, and on the other end was the 13-year-old boy. He was confused and said he was at a taxi stand, but didn't know how he got there. The police were notified, and the boy was located about 1.5 kilometers from the house. The police questioned him, but the boy didn't have many answers. He said that all he remembered was he was standing behind the family member helping with the door. He saw a bright light and heard a popping sound. The next thing he knew, he was standing at the taxi stand on the other side of town. Other than being confused, the boy was completely healthy with no signs of any physical injury. From the English Channel to an English pond. In 1926, Simone Laville was attempting to become one of the first women to successfully swim the English Channel. With an 18-person crew keeping a careful eye on her, Simone was swimming well. Then her support crew began to notice that Simone was slowly disappearing, not below the surface, but vanishing altogether in front of their eyes until they could no longer see her. The crew began a desperate search for her, but could find nothing. Not a trace of where she had gone. They all wondered, how could she just fade away into nothingness? 3 hours later, Simone was found in a farmer's pond 17 miles south of London, with no rational reason and no memory of how she had gotten there. Are these stories about teleportation, however random it seems to be, proof that it is actually possible? Did these unwitting souls wander into a portal or slip into a wrinkle in the fabric of space-time? Or is there a more logical reason? Can there even be a logical reason for what these people say happened to them? Research these stories yourself and determine if they are just strange or strange but true stories. I'm Steve White. Thanks for watching this video. We appreciate the support. Until next time.